I'm Jake Williams, EdScoop's Associate Publisher, and we're here today with Kelsey Nelson, Senior Manager of Product Marketing Solutions with Okta. Kelsey, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Jake.
So Kelsey, we've talked a couple times this year, most recently about the future priorities and roles for state government CIOs. But let's turn our focus to higher education for this conversation. COVID-19 has changed the way that universities are serving their students. Certainly changed approaches to the top priorities that higher ed CIOs have. In EDUCAUSE's annual top IT issues report, they identified three scenarios the pandemic poses: restore, evolve, and transform with regards to IT services. And within those are kind of a number of topics and issues that are top of mind for CIOs. So let's talk first about financial health. It's something that's really important to universities always, but especially in this new era of recession and budget cuts, and something that's certainly top of mind for IT officials. What are you seeing from higher education leaders when it comes to their approach to technology during a time when they need to tighten up their budgets?
Absolutely. Certainly crazy times, Jake. And the more conversations you have, things just get more complicated, right? And I think one of the interesting takeaways that I had from that report was a note around the security side from technology, right? Because a lot of what this is going to come down to is prioritization. We know that there's a lot that we can do to help support student outcomes. And I think those three different restore, evolve, and transform talk about different points at which you might be focusing those resources. But one that underscores all three is that topic of security. And I think there's a quote in there that said, security threats will not lessen. But with reduced budgets, institutions have to prioritize their spend carefully. And so I think as we start to take a look at what is the threat landscape, what are universities facing, and there's obviously a broad swath, but I think that phishing, which is one that we've seen that universities pre-pandemic even faced, I think they're one of the highest targets for those types of attacks. Has only skyrocketed as we've moved into this remote perspective. And so I think looking for ways that we can start to tackle some of those big threats. So something like how can we mitigate phishing threats using things like multi-factor authentication, device and endpoint security are really great ways to start to tackle that particular piece.
Yeah, yeah. So, a big trend, that we've sort of seen over the last few years in higher education and state and local government, kind of across this entire public sector, has been the implementation of technologies and best practices from the private sector, sort of in those public sector operations. How can best of breed private sector solutions around things like identity and access management really change the game for universities?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is on building sort of a common set of standards that they can then go customize, right? And so being able to take, again, taking identity as an example, using a service that can connect into and use open standards like SAML, like OIDC. So you can start to say, hey, let's take the onus off of building a lot of these custom integrations and start using more of that out of the box so that you can focus your teams on really, really supporting student outcomes that are specific to your institution. And so being able to take a lot of those best of breed components that have invested a lot in being able to connect in being best of breed themselves, but also connecting into whatever best of breed, be it Ellucian, be it Google, the Google suite, be it into Blackboard. We want to make sure that that part is taken care of so that you can focus on what's most impactful for your student body.
And with that, you talk about putting that platform in place. With that identity platform and strategy in place, how does that open up opportunity for higher ed to really improve student success with technological tools? I mean, we hear over and over and over again that student success is that key number one priority, no matter what technology we're talking about. So how does that really open up that opportunity for student success?
Yeah, I think being able to have that foundational layer, being able to tackle some of those really, I mean, education is such a tough challenge in that they have the most, I think, complex population that they have to manage, right? A student can also be functioning as an employee because they're working on work study. And so we want to make sure that that whole ecosystem around a campus is really what we're able to drive outcomes around. And so by laying that foundation and by taking some of those big weighty challenges around giving students access to the tools that they need, we can start to really personalize and start to really deliver these better experiences that are most relevant to that particular student's need. And I think that's really what we see unlocking is that ability to set a really strong being able to anyone accessing anywhere. So broadening doors for more students to access, broadening that footprint of who can bring into the university, but then also delivering those tailored experiences is really that transform that was called out in the report. How can we start to broaden a lot of these areas so that we can be more inclusive and really show success for each of those individuals?
And so I'm going to give you the last question here, the big question that everyone is thinking about in 2020 and after COVID-19 and really everything that we've seen across the year. How does all of this come together to paint a picture for the future of higher education?
Well, I wish I had a magic ball, Jake. I don't know that I have a perfect answer to that, but I will say maybe the silver lining of the past few months has been there's been some incredible work done by technology leaders to help rethink and reform the landscape upon which we're trying to achieve student outcomes, right? The idea of being forced into this distributed learning force is not, I think, what anyone had anticipated, but the technology leaders moved really quickly to start to unlock those new those new ways of learning. And I think, if I look ahead into where this is all going, I think what we're hearing from a lot of these leaders is how can we take the greatness of what we've accomplished to date and really use that to transform how we deliver student outcomes, to start to really take the best of what we've had to date and allow that to move forward. And so, you know, be it being able to have more conversations like this. I know we're probably all very familiar with video conferencing to date, but how can we take the best from this and infuse that into learning in the future to really expand how we deliver education today?
Well, Kelsey, I hope we have more conversations like this continuing into the future. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thanks so much again for having us.